Hello, this is Robbie Mitchell here from Head in the Cloud Development to give you an updated walkthrough of our Maps for NetSuite BFN Improved Suite app. This video is being recorded in February 2024 using version 3.11.0 of the Suite app on NetSuite version 2024.1. So first, what is Maps for NetSuite? Put simply, this Suite app is a Google Maps integration for NetSuite. The purpose of the Suite app is to allow users to quickly map groups of customers and transactions on a standard Google map within the NetSuite environment. Users control what is shown on the map primarily by using predefined saved searches or by specifying filter criteria on the fly. And just a quick note on version history here. Maps for NetSuite was previously known as Suite Maps, which has been around for over 10 years now. If you're just getting started with this Suite app, I recommend watching the previous Maps for NetSuite demo videos that I published each February of the last 3 years, where we walk through many more of the features. This video is meant to be an annual update where we go through some newer features. So here's what this video is going to cover. First, as usual, I'll start from scratch and show you how easy it is to install the Suite app. Right off the bat, I'm going to show you how to access the brand new Maps Help menu. Then we're going to start off with simple test mapping just to make sure the basics are working. Once we have some dots on the map, I'll show you how to include a calculated formula value, so customer total sales for example, in the map marker pop-up content. Next we'll look at how to handle situations where your customer's address changes and you have to get them to re-geocode correctly. After that, we'll walk through an example of mapping custom records. Building onto that further, we'll look at mapping a grouped search of custom records. Moving on from there, we'll look at an example of mapping actual entity address records. And similarly, we'll walk through an example of mapping standard location records. Finally, we'll look at Maps portlets and see how to do some advanced filtering there, as well as switching your datasets on and off dynamically. So without further delay, let's see Maps for NetSuite in action here in my demo account. Now, as I mentioned, we're starting from scratch here. I don't even have the Suite app installed yet in this account, so let's do that now. We'll go to the Suite Apps tab, and let's just type in Maps. We'll click on here, and then we'll click the blue Install button. Okay, it's installing. This should take about a minute or two. Okay, so when it's done installing, you should have this Maps Center tab now, which we can use to access Maps records. Let's get started with a new map here. So here we are, and the first thing I want to highlight is this new Maps Help menu. Keeping track of how to use all the features in this Suite app is hard enough, even for someone who uses it every day. To help put together the resources for further help, we've added this new Help button. It has direct links to all the video snippets for the various features, as well as a link to the documentation PDF here at the bottom. Okay, as promised, let's start off with the most basic example mapping we can do here. Many times, where you'll want to start off is just with the saved search field here. I'm going to map my Oregon customers search. So as soon as I tab out of the field, it'll try to map those results. And if it's your first time mapping them, you'll see them being geocoded here. Those coordinates do get stored on the record so that next time you go to map them, it'll map instantly. And if I click on any map marker icon, I can see details about that customer. This really is the gist of this whole Suite app, seeing your NetSuite data on the map here in NetSuite. So, you probably already know that you can get any field from your record to show up on this pop-up by configuring this info pop-up content record, right? Well, what if you want to show a formula value, like the customer's total sales, for example? Let me show you how to do that. So as is often the case with maps, we'll want to start by creating a saved search that has the information that we want to see on the map. So let's create a new customer search. I'm going to click the Create Saved Search button. Let's start off with something very basic. We'll filter to country is United States. And for the results tab, I'm going to remove most of this. Let's just add their company name. And we need to give this search a name, so we'll make it public, and we do need to give it a name. We'll call it Maps Customer Total Sales Feb 2024. We do save and run. Okay, we get 649 customers. Great. So far, so good. So now let's add in their total sales. To do this, we first need to add a transaction filter. For transaction fields, mainline is yes. This way we only get the header transaction values. And let's add a transaction type filter so that we only see sales order amounts here. And on the results tab, we'll add the amount value joined from the transaction. Now if we just want the total value, then we don't even need a formula here. We could just set the summary type here and be done with it. But for our example, let's say we want to deduct the tax total from the transaction total. For that, we're actually going to use a formula currency value. Open my formula box here. I'm going to go to transaction fields. And we're going to take the amount transaction total minus the amount transaction tax total. So transaction.total amount minus transaction.tax amount. Click OK. And now we're going to sum this amount, and we're going to group by company name. Now I'll do save and run. Okay, here's our results. Now, not all of them have sales amounts because this is just a demo account, but enough of them do, so that's fine. Let's go to our map now. The important thing is when doing a grouped search is you have to configure your pop-up content differently than for a non-grouped search. So let's create a new configuration record. We'll call it Customer Total Sales. And to see what value lines we need to have in it, we can use the wonderful Export as Script button here on our search. So while editing a saved search, I have this Export as Script button. This is a Chrome browser plugin. I highly recommend you get it if you're using Maps for NetSuite. So with this, we can see that our record type on the search is Customer. The first field ID is company name, and that's grouped. And the second column is formula currency, and that is summed. So customer, formula currency. I'm going to call it sales total, and that's summed. And I'm going to save this. And then on my map, if I just plug in the search, okay, it says mapping results. And here are our results. So as we know, most of them don't have sales amounts, but if I look at one who does, so 3M, AAA. Let's look at Grant Electronics. So here in my directory, let's scroll down to Grant Electronics and click on that. And yep, there's our $500 sales total. So that works great. Let's move on. We'll shift gears for a moment and talk about what happens when a customer's address changes. Let's look at this customer for example. Let's say our Aaron Abbott customer is moving from Bend, Oregon to Portland, Oregon. So as usual, the first thing we'll do is we'll update their address here. But now importantly, notice that the label hasn't automatically updated. Be sure to update the label as well, because the changing of the label is actually what triggers our script to geocode this new customer when you save them. So now I'll save the customer. And just to confirm that it updated their coordinates, let's take a look at the System Information tab. So here's the change I made. And yep, we can see that it re-geocoded both their billing and shipping address coordinates here. So that worked great. Now let's get back to a map and do an example of mapping custom records. For a custom record mapping example, let's say that I track asset records here in my NetSuite. I'll show you the list. It's a very simple custom record, and of course to support mapping, I have latitude and longitude fields here on the records. So as usual, let's start by making a saved search. We'll call it Maps, Assets, Video. So I have a lot of assets. Let's just find the ones here where the name starts with M. So if I click Save and Run, here are our results. There's only 2. That's okay. So on our map, let's scroll down to this Record Plugins tab. Basically, anytime we're mapping anything other than customers and transactions, we'll use this tab to tell the map what kind of data we're mapping. And again, to know what to put here, we can use the wonderful Export as Script button on our search. So here's my record type ID. The name that I want to show is just name. Here's the latitude field, and here's the longitude field. And then we'll plug in our search. And here are our 2 results. If I click on one, we just see the name by default. That's fine. Let's quickly go one step further to add another field to this info content pop-up. You might have seen we also have a color field here. So let's add the owner and the color of the asset here. So I need the record type ID here. So this color field is just a text field, meaning that I don't need to check this Show Text Not Value checkbox, because that only applies to select fields. So let's also add the owner here. Now the owner is a select field, so I do want to show the text of that. So I'll save this. Now since I've updated this content record, I need to refresh my screen before it'll load. So I'm going to save this. I'm just going to call it Assets. So this is the map in view mode. I can just click this Edit and Map Results button as a shortcut to edit it and remap the results. So once they're remapped, we should see, yep, the owner and the color of both of these assets. So great. All right, so one new thing we've enabled recently is the ability for you to also map grouped custom record searches. So again, let's start with a saved search. I have one prepared this time. Robbie test assets grouped. Again, a very simple custom record search. There's literally no filters, but I have all my results grouped now. They're basically grouped by color, latitude, and longitude, and then we just count how many of there are with that combination. So if I do save and run, this is what the results look like. 16 combinations. So let's do a new map for this. So to map this, our record plugins tab is the same as before. I'll fill that in quickly here. But we need to make a new pop-up configuration since we're using grouped result rows now. And of course, to see what our values should be, we can use our lovely Export as Script button again here. So I'll name my configuration Assets Grouped. Copy the record type ID here. And to keep this one simple, let's just add in the color here. And we set the summary type to group. So if I save this and plug in my search, should see our 16 results here. And of course, this result indicates that there's only one that is blue. So great, that works brilliantly. Okay, let's move on to something new. Now, a lot of people ask me, what if my customer has many different addresses and I want to map all of them? Well, it turns out that mapping addresses is very similar to mapping custom records. So as usual, let's start with a custom search. I have one prepared. So on my Robbie test address search, we just have one filter that says that the latitude is not empty. So you do need to have your own latitude and longitude fields on addresses, as they don't come with the Suite app. But on the Results tab, I've added a few custom fields here. We have the latitude, longitude, and I actually have an address sales rep field. So if we click Save and Run, we see that I just have a couple of addresses set up to test with here. But again, we'll use our lovely Export as Script button. So the record type is just address. Copy the latitude field here. We'll fill these in down on the Record Plugins tab of the map. The record type ID is address. For the name of the address, we'll use the addressee value. And then I'll plug in the latitude and longitude field IDs here. And if we drop in my search, we see our two results here. Okay, so that's not super exciting, but here they are. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting by adding in our custom field here to our pop-up content record. So we have this custom address sales rep field here. And we can edit this record. We'll add a line for address. Here's the field ID. We'll call it sales rep. And we do need to show text, not value, because this is a select field. I'll click OK, save that. Now since I've updated this, I need to reload my map, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to call it Plantronics Addresses. And if I click Edit and Map Results again, then it'll map using the updated configuration. And here are our records with sales reps. So great. Now let's move on. So if you want to map location records, you can do the same exact thing as addresses, except that location records actually come with latitude and longitude fields on them, so it's even easier. So as usual, we'll start with a saved search. We've got a location search here. There's no filters. On the results, we show the location info along with the latitude longitude. So if I click Save and Run, I see that I've got longitude and latitude entered for my San Francisco and Boston locations, so those two at least should work. And again, we can use our Export as Script button on the search. But this one's almost too easy. It's just location and latitude and longitude. So on our map, we can scroll down to the Record Plugins tab. Record type is location, name field is name, latitude is latitude, and longitude. So then if I type in my search name, here is our San Francisco location and our Boston location. Too easy. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about map portlets. There's a couple of things I want to show you here. First, we need an example. Let's create a map with a couple of different data sets on it. This map is going to be US and UK customers. And of course we know that if we go down to the Datasets tab, we can plug in multiple saved searches by different colors here. So let's just do US customers. We'll keep them as the default pin color. And then we'll show our UK customers in green. And of course, let's make sure to click this Auto Refresh Map checkbox here. This will make it reload dynamically every time we view it, rather than just displaying the data as it was last time it was saved. I'll go ahead and save this. And of course, when it opens in view mode, it should show the data here. So now let's make a portlet for this map. To make a portlet, we go to Customization, Scripting Scripts, filter the type to portlet, view the Maps portlet, go to the Deployments tab, and let's create a deployment. We'll call this Map US and UK. We'll apply it to all roles, and on the Parameters tab, we'll select our US and UK customers map. Let's save this. We'll switch back to our Home tab, and what we need is a custom content portlet. You can add one from the Personalize menu if you don't have one, but I'm going to click Setup here. And I'm just going to select the map US and UK as my source. So here's my map on the portlet. It looks like it's loading the points to display. But the first new thing here is that if you have a portlet that uses multiple searches, you'll now see a multi-select field right on the portlet that lets you switch individual searches on and off. So if I deselect the UK customers one here, the map will redraw and resource in just the US customers. Of course, I can click over here on the UK customers one as well, and it'll redraw with just those. Now what if I don't select any? If I deselect all of them, nothing will happen, because you do actually have to be a little bit careful with portlets here. One thing that we have implemented recently is a set of warnings and controls around how many search results can show up. In past versions, we found pretty bad problems where if you tried to map more results than the browser could handle, the map basically crashes. And due to the way that NetSuite caches portlets, this had a really severe impact and even temporarily prevented us from being able to log into NetSuite. So the lesson of the story is, if you're using portlets, make sure that you're not trying to map thousands and thousands of results, otherwise you might crash your NetSuite. But moving on, the second thing I want to show you is that you can actually add your own filter fields right here on the portlet now. I'll preface this by saying that we may be improving the user interface for this in the future, but let me show you how you can configure filter fields using what we have in place today. You'll find it on the Parameters tab of the script deployment. We have this filter fields config here, and if I click on the field help, it even gives us a little example. So we can see that the format is JSON, and it's a field ID, a source, and a label. So if I copy and paste that, and paste it into here, we're not going to use this field because this was just an example, but I'll show you how a few things work here. For our first filter, let's do a sales rep field. So the field ID is just sales rep, all one word. The source is the employee list. And for the label, let's just say sales rep. Now if I save this, and if we refresh our portlet, we now have a sales rep field on it. Let's try it out. If I say sales rep is Mary Redding, the map will redraw and refilter according to that. And so yeah, it looks like we only have one UK customer whose sales rep is Mary Redding. So here it is. Great. Let's do a few more simple examples. I'll edit my script deployment. Now let's see what it looks like to add in a filter for the state. Again, we'll start by copying and pasting what we have already. So for state, the field ID is state ID. The source is state, and for the label we'll just say state. I'll save this. Now let's refresh our map. And for this test, I'll switch to US customers here. So now if I filter my state to just Hawaii maybe, we should only see those Hawaiian customers. So what's happened here? Looks like this customer must be geocoded incorrectly. Well, when this happens, it's a very good indication that we have some bad data that we need to fix. But that's not what we're here for, so let's move on. I'm going to do a couple more examples on my portlet here. So we've done state, now let's do country. Country is a little special. The field ID is country, but the field source is -159. Don't ask me why, but the label is country. If I reload again, here's our map with our country filter. And honestly, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to filter this map portlet by country, but just for the example, let's do it anyway. I'll filter to United States. And hopefully all my customers in Hawaii are recognized as being in the US. Yes, they are. So that still works. And for the last example, let's do subsidiary. Again, I'll copy and paste. For subsidiary, the field ID is just subsidiary. The source is also subsidiary. And the label is subsidiary. I'll refresh this. And I think all my customers are in the Honeycomb Manufacturing subsidiary, but let's find out. So it's remapping with that final setting. And yep, they're still there, so that's great. And this concludes the 2024 tour of Maps for NetSuite. At Head in the Cloud Development, we're always looking for ideas to make our products better. Please get in touch with us if you have any comments or questions. You can email us at gurus@headintheclouddev.com or contact us through our website at www.headintheclouddev.com. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at SuiteWorld.